Alright, time for another. Oh, that's not it. Welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings here in Mendham. Keep it simple. I don't know what to say. Kind of a rough week. Anyway, arguing with people. Making arguments, the whole process of this, again, communicating. And I have learned something slightly humbling, that you have to be a little careful. You got to go through all of this stuff and make sure you're not cheating in some way, or missing something in making assertions or arguments, and blah 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 blah. But the same goes for everybody. Everybody's got to be a little bit rational and stay within certain parameters of acceptable rhetoric, blah blah blah. But anyway, beside the point. So Steve Godfrey, who I just don't understand what ticked him off and what sent him into this, whatever this place is that he's in now, along with other people who are just, they're just about hating, and there just isn't anything else they want to do. And it's their business. I hate lots of things and lots of people. Because of what they say and what they stand for and what they defend, but it really just happens the easiest way. I mean, I really ticked off the morbid atheist apparently by pointing out that I think it's just a sham, to say you're going to do this debt forgiveness thing, when it comes to student loans. I mean, student loans were basically, it's not a racket. I mean, it's a well subsidized, not for profit loaning institution. I mean, you're getting really good rates, basically just having to pay back for inflation. So I mean, nobody's ripping you off in any substantial way. It is being subsidized already, okay, by the government, and you're still complaining. And it just seems kind of, you weren't afraid of taking on debt. Okay, me and you are very different people. So, again, you're the one who took the risk. Why should I have to pay the price? It just doesn't make much sense. And everybody makes their decisions based on these things, and you're just basically mocking all the people who were afraid to be debt piler-oners. Because you're saying, oh, you should have piled on a bunch of debt. You should have bought a TV you couldn't afford, and a car you couldn't afford, and a house you couldn't afford, because we're just going to forgive all this debt stuff, and you don't have to pay it back. I mean, the rich are playing that game right now, okay? I mean, they're stealing the money right now. They're not paying taxes on all their capital gains, and it's clearly, if they lose money, they get it back again by not paying any taxes for 20 years, like Trump. I mean, it's a terrible racket, but that doesn't mean you should mimic it, Well, anyway, but you can piss somebody off because of that, It's just like they have their little niche that they're looking at the world through. So I'm trying to figure out, Steve, sorry to change the subject, but I'm trying to figure out what Steve's thing is here, and I really can't find it in the sense of just my interactions. I can't think of how I possibly triggered somebody who was, went from being very supportive to being very hostile. And what was the key phrase, what was the key concept that I somehow said in some sort of way that all of a sudden he realized, oh, I'm an evil person. You could go back to even the whole thing with the superhuman dance. I mean, what were the trigger words there? I mean, what the hell happened there? It doesn't make any sense. Okay, so we don't speak the same kind of English, and we don't wish to alliterate the argument in the same form. Somehow he's arguing that somehow it's structurally, fundamentally different. And it's because of some philosophical concept, like some nihilist concept that you can't make an is out of an ought, or some other kind of crap. You can't make an ought out of an is. And this argument underlying this is something like the argument where I'm not allowed to be confident about the fact that I am a sentient being and I'm actually experiencing sentience, right? And I'm sitting here listening to other people who are supposed to be sentient beings. I can only speculate, right? I can only assume. I can't get inside their head and see if they do have actually miseries and pains and you know, endure anguish and you know, discomfort, dissettlement in their conscious entity, fear and anxiety and worry and all that stuff. Maybe they don't. But come on, the assumption is they must. But I mean, it's kind of bizarre. They're telling me I don't have any evidence. I can't prove. You know, I can't. You know, I can't establish it as a fact when I'm actually experiencing it. You know, I mean, I'm actually sitting there on the roller coaster, blah 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 blah, and they're telling me, "You've never experienced a roller coaster. How can you know? How can you make a declaration?" Well, because I'm riding it, and you know, I'm experiencing it. You can't tell me I don't know it. I mean, it's kind of silly. Yeah, well, maybe I can't prove it to a computer. I mean, maybe I can't form a logical argument to say to a computer, this is what a feeling is. And he's not going to get it, right? I mean, I'm going to say, well, it's terrible. It causes all these feelings and these emotions and all this discomfort. And the computer's going to say, what's that? You know, I don't know that shit. What are you talking about? Compare it to something real. You know, the computer's going to say, give me an analogy. You know, well, how can I analogize something that is unique in the universe? I mean, I can't compare it to some other kind of sentience. I can't say, well, it's just like eating an orange, except it's not. You know, but anyway, so I don't. But it's hard to figure out what the hang-ups are here. So this seems. I mean, I haven't listened to the video. I just somebody linked me to it. And it's just such an insane argument, and he's making it against Benatar now. So it's not me who he wishes to put words in my mouth. I mean, now he's trying to tell Benatar what he's saying. You know, the guy who wrote the whole book, and you know, was pretty articulate. It's a well-titled book. I mean, you know, his argument's pretty simple, and it's like he's converting sentences. So he says this is a game-changing fact. David Benatar did not say animals are included within antinatalism, when of course Benatar in interviews has actually used the word animals. Now in this sentence he didn't use the word animals, right? Because he was being precise in his description. So he wanted to be more exact in the statement. So he called animals sentient beings. But I mean, he's clearly said it, that you know, this whole subject involves you know, all sentient life. I mean, the same arguments apply to anything that's in the feeling game. I mean, that's clearly what he's saying. I just don't have, you know, this guy thinks he's got some kind of way to say Benatar didn't say all those things. He didn't do all those interviews. He didn't articulate all these arguments. Now, I've complained from the very beginning that I thought Benatar was cheating the biosphere by saying I can just make this argument to humans and relevant to humans, and you know, that somehow will, you know, they'll read the one sentence I said that it applies to everything. Because of course it's a much more complex argument. You can't do this notion of, well, I'm going to fix the problem of rape by I won't rape anybody and I will try to convince other people not to rape anybody. But I won't pass a law against anything. I won't in any way do anything else and totally rely on just persuasion. And it's, yeah, it's just too bad. The women who get raped by people who aren't persuadable, yeah, just too bad for them. They got raped by the wrong guy. You know, they got raped by somebody who couldn't be persuaded by words not to rape them. So tough shit for those victims. You know, yes, you can throw those people. See, the people who get thrown off the Titanic because the boat wobbles this way, too bad. You know, the boat wobbles this way will rescue you. But if the boat wobbles this way, nah, we won't even try. You know, that's how I would. I find the argument very dissatisfactory. Okay, anyway. But this is, somehow this is an issue for these people. I don't know whether it's because they are meat eaters or something, or whether they just think animals are just useless pieces of shit. They don't really think, they think evolution completely changed 100,000 years ago, you know, when human beings got language, you know, and that's when sentience began. I mean, all the other organisms weren't really feeling. Humans weren't even feeling until they got smart enough to do 2 + 2. So when they could do 2 + 2 is 4, then they're feeling, then they matter. But the day before that, nah, they were just really just dumb animals, so who cares? I don't understand the logic at all. So anyway, it says in the description, how do ethicists justify AN connection? So antinatalism, the only thing, I mean, to me, it's a pretty simple statement about not having kids. And clearly, don't have life. Okay, I don't, what the kid looks like, I don't care. I'm anti all kids. Okay, not just human ones. But he thinks, I think, that antinatalism means you just make arguments trying to persuade people not to rape, and that's as far as it goes, I guess. Without misrepresenting what Benatar said. So, I mean, clearly he's the one attempting to misrepresent what Benatar has clearly articulated. And so this is, you can only call this trolling Benatar now. He puts Benatar in his title, in the name, in the title, and then says something Benatar would not agree with. I mean, clearly Benatar won't say, oh, fuck you, you stupid cunt. I mean, he's not going to make that argument to you. But, I mean, clearly, if this video got some attention, I think Benatar would clearly articulate to you that he doesn't find this a very satisfactory description of all the statements he's made in his performance on the subject, and that it would be a huge mischaracterization. And, you're guilty of a huge mischaracterization. I mean, you're very, it's pretty rude. This video is really rude just in title. All right, but I can't, let's hear what the argument is.
Game-changing fact. David Benatar never said animals are or can be included within antinatalism.
Yeah, he did. I mean, it's just completely his argument. He's overtly said it, and sort of Old Fan pushed him, sort of just because of I've brought it up. And, sort of directly asked the question and directly pushed him on why he's not very aggressive. And he defended himself, kind of saying, I'm aggressive. I pointed it out in the book. I mean, I always say it, that, this includes all the animals. So, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, clearly, whatever we call Benatar's philosophy, I wouldn't call it antinatalism, but whatever, let's call it that. I mean, clearly, he's stating whatever I'm arguing here, all these arguments apply, okay, to the babies being born in the wild. They're better never to have been also.
His exact words, and better never to have been, were, my argument applies not only to humans, but also to all other sentient beings.
I mean, a pretty clear statement. I didn't miss it. I mean, I remember reading the book, and I remember reading the statement. I'm saying, oh, cool, at the time. But I didn't realize that every single other argument in the book wasn't ever going to include something about, like, laboratory rats or something. I mean, there really wasn't much of an appeal to rescue, the animal kingdom.
Page 2. On his Exploring Antinatalism episode, he said,
I think I was quite explicit that the arguments there apply to all sentient life.
See, so he's a pretty articulate guy, and he's basically pointing out, no, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying the argument applies. I mean, I don't know how he... Is this some sort of joke video? I don't know. Am I missing the... ha 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 ha, it's a funny thing or something?
Better never to have been didn't argue antinatalism. It argued the...
Oh, come on. It's covered in the fact that procreation is the action, the act, and that the act can't essentially be justified because of these arguments, the asymmetry argument. Benatar makes lots of other arguments. He makes the the false optimism argument, the fact that people just forget the bad times and just focus on the future, and that's part of the psychology. So he makes arguments from psychology, and he makes arguments from plain facts. So come on. I mean... one thing to be playing games with this straw-haired, reckless slob asshole inmendham, but it's a whole nother thing to be sitting there and pretending you're making an argument against Benatar. He's been so careful and so articulate and so all those things. Like I said, I don't love his arguments because I don't think they have any anger and passion in them, which is just, I think it should be displayed more overtly that, the fact is you people taking these chances are child molesters. I mean, they should be kind of called what they are. All right, they're criminal child molesters. They're using children for their own gratification. They're using their children like dildos. It's disgusting behavior. And he just doesn't make those arguments.
Symmetry. When Benatar says my arguments and the arguments in the above statements, he's referencing his asymmetry arguments.
He's referencing all his arguments. All the arguments he's made, attempting to persuade and qualify as a reasoned argument why people have this false and fake impression that they're doing something a favor by sentencing it to death. He's made the argument from Mars is doing just fine. I mean, he's made that argument. There's no cancer there. There's nobody in jail. There's nobody stressing. There's nobody panicking. And there's nobody blowing out their birthday cupcake. But so what? Who's missing that? No one. There's no Martians in some purgatory somewhere going, oh, please, please, let me out. Let me have my cupcake. My cupcake fun. No, it's not happening. So, I mean, he has more than one argument.
The asymmetry is not antinatalism.
No, it's one piece of evidence indicating why people should be antinatalists.
The reason for why someone might arrive at the conclusion that procreation is unconditionally unethical.
Oh, is that what the conclusion has to be? I thought you were including anybody who was against procreation. Like you don't have to be a vegan because you care about animals just as long as you're a vegan. I mean, just as long as you... I don't eat meat because, some meat I don't eat because I think it's gross and disgusting. So, I didn't have to know it harms little critters. I just had to look at it and say, I ain't eating that shit. I mean, it doesn't change the structure much. So you're saying you're only an antinatalist if you have some ethical notion that it's wrong. You're not an antinatalist if you just hate kids, for example.
He's making the point that coming into existence is a harm for all sentient beings.
Yeah, that's what he's doing.
Not that the unethicality of procreation extends to all sentient...
Oh, please. I mean, the ethical argument is certainly the animals are incapable of making the ethical judgment. So, of course, you don't blame them for being stupid, okay, of not understanding a simple ethical concept, just like it's not about blaming people for their the consequences. It's about preventing. So it's about getting people aware of the fact. Now, obviously, you can't make an animal aware that it's unethical. I mean, but it doesn't change the fact that it's unethical. That the fact is that that they are, okay, abusing these animals, their children, and the prey they eat. Doesn't change those facts. I mean, this is such a pathetic word game.
Beings. He goes on to say...
So he's saying that antinatalism is just a belief. Okay, it's not a concept. It's not an idea that can be defended by arguments. It's just some kind of, you either believe it, or if you don't, you're just a non-believer. You can go ahead and rape because rape isn't bad as long as you don't think so. I mean, it's that kind of argument, right? I mean, it's basically just saying if you don't know, if you're dumb, you're retarded, and you rape, the rape didn't happen? Well, of course it did. Of course we would know that it was unethical. Yeah, we can understand that somebody retarded couldn't know that.
Page 2. The exception is the case of human breeding of animals, from which we could also desist. This is what I'm driving at with my concept of intending parties.
Okay, so he has a concept of intending parties. That's interesting. You know, more verbiage, more complex, bizarre verbiage that intuitively can't mean a thing to anybody. I mean, if I go out on the street and say intending parties, yeah, where am I going to get?
Section 4.2 of my defense.
So again, this isn't about holding people to you know, legal standards or to prosecution or any of that thing. Okay, it's just about whether or not something is an efficient. You're describing the efficiency of an action, and the definition of unethical is when you have violated efficiency. It's not any more complicated than that. And again, it's not about establishing a right to persecute or punish. It's establishing whether or not the action in and of itself is good or bad.
Consequence of this is
Is there a causal relationship? And understanding that all you have to do is break the cause to break the effect. So you have a cause that's causing an inefficiency that is unethical when known and still wrong when unknown. So it really doesn't matter whether animals are aware that they're raping. It just matters that they're raping.
One, claiming that Benatar says animals are included within antinatalism is wrong.
They're included as being victims in need of protection. Is the argument got to be made any more elaborate than that? They're victims in need of protection, right? And the cause, the reason why they have to be protected is because the act is inefficient or dysfunctional or insufficiently efficient. Okay, it degrades the state of being, and that's why people will attempt to prevent it. And so you just find the cause, the proximate cause, and you attempt to prevent the proximate cause, and that's what you're against, is the proximate cause, procreation. So this is, you know, why the word game? Why play this game? Why pretend that there's anything different between these two sets of victims? The ones that are being victimized by ignorance and the ones that are being victimized by bad philosophy. I mean, how are those two things any different? How is the victim any different? So you have an ethical code that's basically saying, I only care about victims who are persecuted by people who are belligerently unwilling to accept reality. I mean, what exactly is the standard for their non-belief? What do we call that? So when they're capable of understanding and they don't, we say now they're guilty of an ethical crime and their victim is important. But if they're incapable of understanding, or if they've not understood for whatever, some better reason, is there some, what kind of ground are you walking? So I would just say this is obviously quite backwards. All right, people who were for a cause, not because of the victims, but because of the nature of the perpetrator. So they're against rapists, not because they want to save victims, but merely because the rapists are bad. They're unethical. They've committed a thought crime. So we'll persecute the rapists for their thought crime, but we really won't worry about victims.
And anything they say which relies on Benatar having said that is unsustainable.
Oh, it's just too silly. So just such an extraordinary bending of concepts and words. I mean, if you've understood the semantical argument as I've understood it, you must understand that semantics says it's irrational argumentation, because you haven't focused on the perpetrator and are focused on saving victims. When What do they have to do with it? Yeah. All right.
Another upshot is weakening, if not decimating, the ethicist claim that ethicalism is somehow connected to antinatalism.
I don't even understand that whole concept of this. I'm obligated to be connected, like liquids, all liquids are similar or something, like we're in some kind of sort of category. I mean, clearly antinatalism is the broad category in one sense, in terms of defining procreation against something for any reason. Okay, you can have any reason. You hate humans, lots of reasons you can be in the category of antinatalist, where clearly ethicist is a subcategory of that. Now, clearly the subcategory of ethicist is saying, well, yeah, we're not just doing this hate human thing, okay? And we're clearly, the focus isn't a species or a type of functioning being, beyond the fact that they have this one feature. Okay, they don't need to have intelligence. All they need to have is the capacity to feel, and they're in the category of our will to protect. So it's broader in that sense, and it's narrower in who it's blaming. Okay, so we don't care about blaming, we care about stopping, and we have a very broad category of victims, because the only victims aren't human.
How do ethicists justify the antinatalism connection without misrepresenting what Benatar said?
Just a bizarre statement, right? I mean, there's no way to misrepresent it. He's basically saying all the arguments I'm going to make apply to all the other sentient beings. So I just, yeah, sorry. Make another 2-minute video explaining, because I didn't get it. I didn't get your argument at all. I don't see any inconsistency between what I'm saying and what Benatar is saying, beyond the fact that Benatar is saying, well, this is just an argument we can make. We'll never be able to do anything about it. And I'm saying, well, of course we can do something about it. We stop lots of crimes. We prohibit dog fighting. We prohibit bullfighting. We prohibit reckless. You can't go out in your yard and just torture animals. We have laws against that stuff. So yeah, we can do something. Sure, damn right we can do something. So that's a big difference there. I mean, it's not an academic subject from my perspective. There's actual victims being flown off the boats, and I'm saying let's save them. Let's save the future from this pointless hardship, and we can do it. And the first way not to do it is to pretend you can't do it. That's the first way to fail. There's lots of ways to fail, but that's the easiest one, is to pretend, oh, I can't do it. Yeah, I can't clean the house, or we'll scrub the floor, or just pretend you can't do it, and then it won't get done. That guarantees it won't get done. Pretending you can't. All right. Let's see. I disagree. David Benatar in this interview in 2016 said, so let's see what he said here. Antinatalism can be understood in a variety of different ways, but broadly speaking, it's an opposition to bringing new beings into existence, and that would apply to humans. But it would also apply to animals by breeding them, for example. So that, to me, is a pretty lousy Benatar qualification, actually. Again, it's about the victim. So he's, lost the focus. That the focus is the victims. It's happening to the victims. And we're just arguing about whether the rape is intentional or not intentional, or whether it's a behavior that they can learn or they can't learn it. And it really just doesn't matter otherwise. It's rape, and it should be stopped. And who cares about the, the nature of the rapists? We know they're the cause, and we know they need to be stopped. Now, some of them you can stop by just holding up a sign that says, "Stop raping you." That'll actually work. I mean, stop raping you. You bad person, you. That'll work on some. Some people say, "Oh shit, yeah, damn, I just wasn't thinking very hard. I get it. Oh yeah, causing harm to other people, that's a terrible thing to do. Okay, I get it." So they're easy. Some of them can be persuaded. But some of them are going to be not persuadable. And you might have to, you know, you might have to do something about it. You know, you might have to do something a little bit more aggressive. And there you can take little steps of aggression where you just, you make it harder to rape, you know, because you, I don't know, force men to wear one of those bracelets around their wieners. And then you can follow the wieners around, make sure they're not getting into trouble. You know, there's different things you could do, you know. I'm kind of a fan of steamrollers, but, you know, whatever. There's some method you could figure out to stop the rapist. All right, 4 replies. Seems to me the quote you linked buttresses the point of view that Benatar considers AM and inexplicably linked with ethical agency. Yes, it does seem that way. So yes, it was, in my opinion, a great link, a great statement, because now he's just talking about the ethics of humans raising pigs and cows and chickens and goats and saying, oh, that's bad because human beings know better, because human beings can know better. Okay, so yeah, it really doesn't matter that nature's stupid and doesn't know it's torturing animals. It just doesn't matter. Okay, which humans have and animals don't. This statement is consistent with what I present in the video. Yes, you're correct. I would argue that that's not a great winning line. But I'm just saying that obviously I can also quote other statements from Benatar where he's clearly stating that animals are just as in need, okay, of rescue as humans. His immediate words after the quote you cited, how I came to this position, well, the world's an ugly place and life seems pretty, let's see what he says there, that's interesting, hard, and I don't know why we would inflict more of that on others. Well, he's also made the argument about creating a rock that's sentient. You know, you have the power to make it sentient. Why would you do that? Why would you make it die and make it feel and make it do all of these things that can be very unpleasant? Just so it can go, you're going to have a happy birthday party. You know, I mean, that only really works when you're a kitten, right? I mean, you know, kittens have fun. But once you grow up, life is just hard work. Okay, here he's separating his reasons for AN from AN itself. Again, consistent with what I present in the video. I don't think he's saying anything like that. He's explaining why it occurred to him that, you know, maybe he should write a book. There's every chance I'm wrong. Odds are against me because I haven't read or heard everything he said. Oh, interesting. And he has, in fact, explicitly stated that antinatalism itself, not just the asymmetry argument, can be applied to all sentient beings. Happy to be shown this and proven wrong. Well, then probably you should annotate the video and say, sorry. I mean, I just had to, you know, de-publicarize one of my videos because, man, I think I'm making a wrong argument, and that's, you know, whoops. And, yeah, so just take down this video and make some other argument because this one's really stupid. Can you please elaborate on this? The word unethical. I don't know if these are all his words or not. In the definition proposed by you, together with your understanding of it, seems misleading to me. So I guess he's quoting this. Oh, yeah, you see, you should like make it all caps or do something to the text so you know what you're quoting and what you're typing, because this is really confusing. Okay. So I also think they would defend anthropocentric antinatalism. I mean, this vocabulary using all these multisyllabical words. I just don't see any function in that. I don't see this as defending anthropocentric antinatalism against centrocentric antinatalism. I mean, come on, you people can't be this silly. I mean, not really. In your heart, these words don't live in your heart, do they? Oh please. I'm not convinced centrocentric anti-natalism be even a thing, or that atheism is an anti-natalist position. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, clearly the proximate cause of the harm is procreation. Now, you're saying that natalism isn't procreation, but I don't think he'd be arguing that if they called themselves anti-procreationists instead of anti-natalists, that would be a huge distinction, right? I mean, everybody's kind of saying the word natalism has to do with the idea of procreating. Clearly, it's the proximate cause. And how can he say an ethicist isn't against it? The proximate cause. They're not against the proximate cause? I don't get it. I've seen these assertions declared as true. I understand the proximate cause. You're the ones who are saying we don't have any capacity to, any authority as thinking beings to do anything to stop the proximate cause. That somehow the proximate cause has stature above us, is superior to us. It has a superior status as an event in the universe, and we have no right to judge it or to stop it. Where I'm clearly saying, of course I have a right to stop the rapists. No problem. Whether they know what they're doing or whether they don't know what they're doing, I'm going to stop them. Okay. But let's see. But I have yet. Okay. It seems these assertions declared as true, but I've yet. I don't know what that exactly was. Indeed, I have some impression that you have. I have the same impression that you have about David Benatar linking anti-natalism to ethical agency. Okay, so I don't know what this is now. I don't think it's true that he never said non-human animals are or can be included within anti-natalism. I mean, it's just silly. He's clearly stating that he would make the same arguments in defense of animals being bred. By nature, by people, by aliens. He's not going to... What, do you think the argument stops if aliens are doing it? No, it doesn't matter what's causing it. He's still going to say the victim was better never to have been. Well, whatever. Let's see what Conundrum says. What about non-humans who reproduce in the wild? Oh, god damn. What about the really dumb ones? Don't they have a free right because they're dumb? Anyway, would you say it's accurate to say that the anti-natalist diagnosis applies to them as well, so they are included in anti-natalism or not? Well, there was no answer to that, unfortunately. Okay, thanks, mate. I'm comfortable entertaining disagreement. I invite it. Disagreement puts the brakes on bad ideas. Well, I'd say it's, your jargon is, needs some brakes put on it. Everyone agrees. Everybody agreeing is when problems appear. So if we all agree that water is wet, we're in big trouble. That'll be a horrible mistake. I just don't have patience for sloppy or bad faith nonsense. So again, Benatar is just so careful in how he writes. I'd say it's almost too careful. And yet he's just calling it sloppy jargon. I mean, it's just too silly. Our people with Dunning-Kruger. Oh, yeah. Point that little finger and see how far you get. Because, I'm rubber, you're glue, fella. As I say, it's possible DB, so we're calling him DB now, did say AN includes animals. yeah, well, it's possible he did. He said it right in the book, actually. You're just not too cool on understanding synonyms for animal. Sentient being is a synonym for animal, pretty much. But I haven't come across it when I've read and heard so far. Just amazing, really. I mean, you just watch any of his interviews, he always makes the statement. Again, I would argue he makes it too passively, but he makes the statement. I don't use unethical to exclude animals. I don't use unethical. Okay. Yeah, but you're using it to exclude perpetrators. If the perpetrator is an animal, the rape doesn't count. If the perpetrator is not an animal, the rape counts only if the perpetrator knew it was unethical. Yeah, okay. I exclude animals because I understand AN is a matter of unethical. So again, it's not a matter of damage. It's not a matter of destruction. It's of welfare. It's not a matter of harm. It's just a matter of understanding it's bad. And if you don't understand it's bad, rape all you want. Okay. We won't stop you. Okay. My understanding of A.N. Cannon, Schopenhauer, mainlander, I've never even heard of him, Ecolesticides, is that it's focused on the wrongness of bringing people into existence. The wrongness of the product, the facts that you're going to create harm. You're going to electrocute them to death, so to speak. You're going to give them the chair for no crime. My impression of those who want to include animals is that they approach the matter from the opposite direction. Well, clearly, yes. I'm very uninterested in whose penis is doing which to what. I'm interested in the fact that it doesn't belong where it's going. It's a bad thing. Okay. They've decided animals should be included and seek to define AN in a way that reflects that. Again, I didn't seek to change AN, so that's why I called myself an ethicist, because I knew AN wasn't going to change. It wasn't going to be specific. So I decided to be specific, that I am against rape. I don't care about rapers. It's irrelevant to me. All right, who's doing the raping? To be clear, I'm not implying my suspicious motives, just wrong direction thinking. So again, he's saying it's the wrong way to look at the problem is to care about the victims. The right way to look is just persecute the people who knew better, or something like that. And whether you persecute them, that's a whole nother issue. I mean, maybe it's just a thought crime, so it doesn't matter. This connects with your question about me not being convinced about sanctiocentric AN being a thing. Well, I hope it never becomes a thing because it's just too ridiculous a word. I've seen it declared but not laid out and defended. So again, this is all somehow very complicated when here you're all just saying that it's better never to have been. The victim will always be raped. Okay, it'll always be a rape. But we only stop it when the rapist is a shithead. Okay. It doesn't make any sense to describe animal procreation as unethical. So the victim is just as big a victim, right? But we're supposed to care about the motivations of the teeth that rip something apart. And its motivations decide whether the victim had their head torn off. And blood spurted out and all that stuff. All of the bad stuff doesn't happen if the victim, if the perpetrator doesn't realize he's a shithead. Okay, or something like that. Because animals can't be intending parties. So again, totally irrelevant. Really. So from his perspective, it wasn't so bad. The Jurassic Park idea. Just the overt bloodletting. It's not so bad because nobody had any bad intentions. So nothing bad happened. And you could just replay it because nothing unethical happened. So how could anything bad happen if nobody was being an unethical perpetrator? There couldn't possibly be a harm, right? It's like, it's like saying it's not a bomb. If you make the fuse out of a different substance. If I make the fuse out of tissue paper, oh, that's not an official fuse, no bomb. Didn't blow up. but I understand there's a case to be made about animals brought into existence by humans. So he would care for the ones brought into existence. So if you're born a mouse out in the woods and get eaten in 22 hours, you know, it's horribly chewed up, somehow that's a little different than if you're in a lab and, you know, they inject you with stuff and you die in 22 hours. Somehow there's the tragedies, or somehow this one's real and this one we can ignore entirely because that just doesn't have anything to do with an ethical code of some kind. You know, we don't want to have ethical arguments about it. So, you know, this is such a disconnect from reality. For me, the game is still the same. When I take the simple Wikipedia explanation of what antinatalism is, so this is even kind of funny. You know, a philosophical position with social movement assigns a negative value to birth. I mean, okay, so that's pretty simple. Obviously, birth has a consequence, and that's the thing they're really against. All right, so, you know, you're not anti-natalist because the day you're born you say, oh, that's the tragedy. No, it's a little more complicated than that. Alright, let's see if there's anything else it says here. I can straightforwardly use Benatar's argument to support the thesis that being brought into existence is a serious harm. Yeah, that's really all you got to understand, and that same serious harm is happening to all the other animals. Also to non-human animals. Benatar made some arguments in his book, Better Never to Have Been, the mostly known being the asymmetry argument. Yeah, I know, but there was lots of other arguments that are arguments for antinatalism. This is me essentially saying that the non-human condition is included within antinatalism. Well, it's clearly included by Benatar's version. Now, it's clearly not included by human extinctionists and other kinds of antinatalists. You know, they're clearly only antinatalist against one type of natalism. I don't need to be thinking that asymmetry or equals antinatalism. You certainly don't. To think that the asymmetry argument is an argument for antinatalism. Well, you don't have to believe all the arguments. You don't have to believe, you know, all you need is one of them to be convinced. So if the argument applies to Mary, then this is an argument for antinatalism with respect to Mary. I don't know what that means. They're all conditional arguments. Clearly the argument is that the conditions are irrelevant. I mean, there are no, you know, this logic of saying, again, the victims of the boat who fall off left, right, who cares? The only one we're going to matter are the ones that fall off front, back, you know. That wouldn't make any sense. If the argument applies to all sentient beings, then this is an argument for antinatalism with respect to all sentient beings. My whole point in caring is to rescue victims. That's my only agenda. I mean, really, I don't have any interest in punishing perpetrators. I just have interest in preventing the rapes, so you could say. So any mechanism that effectively stops the rape and does it fairly, that is, it doesn't give a priority to the rape victims, you know, left-right rape victims versus port bow rape victims. I mean, you know, let's see. It would have been better if you explained more precisely in the present video what do you mean by X is included in antinatalism. I don't know what that means. It may be the case that it will boil down to you not liking the phrasing used. Well, clearly this is boiling down to just semantical crap. But there is in here clearly an agenda to somehow disconnect the idea of antinatalism from some broad philosophical perspective that includes all victims, whether by an act of volition or not. All I'm pointing out here is that when Benatar refers to the arguments, he's talking about his asymmetry arguments. Well, that's just not true. Not antinatalism. He's saying there's a whole slew of arguments that make it possible for you to recognize that you're not doing something a favor by injecting it into an imperfect world that will, in all likelihood, cause it harm. Alright, IOW, I don't know what that, in own world, I don't know, I don't know what that means. He isn't saying AN applies to animals, so that's just, you know, too silly. Again, he's actually saying his asymmetry applies to animals. I don't even know why he would say this stuff. I mean, he's just clearly saying the arguments he's making do apply to animals. I say the irreducibility complex definition of AM is the assessment that procreation is unconditionally unethical. No, that it causes unjustifiable harm is even better, in my opinion. Indefensible harm, uncompensatable harm. It is catastrophically, essentially, to ethical functions, harmful. There can't be any way to rescue it, because the harm is a violation of so many elemental aspects of fairness and decency and correct and right and productive. It violates all of those things. Procreation is unconditionally unethical because coming into existence is always a harm. Well, I don't even know if I'd say that, right? Coming into existence carries with it an act that carries with it the probability of an uncompensatable victim being created. You will force something to suffer when it didn't concede to play that game. Okay, this definition necessarily excludes animals unless animals have the same capacity for ethical agency. So again, he just keeps arguing that the idea of what rape is and the idea of whether a victim is harmed is somehow dependent on what's in the mind of the person who did the rape. And I would say that's sort of a non-starter, right? I mean, anybody who's arguing from that perspective that this is just about punishing perpetrators and not saving victims, that's just too upside down, right? And I've sort of made that point about 6 times in this video now, that my reason for being any of these categories of perspective or philosophy is only for the purpose of saving victims. There's no other useful function beyond that. Preventing victims is the entirety of my motivation, and everything else just couldn't matter. Yeah. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to drown fewer people than I rescue. So I'm going to prevent more than I create. That's it. That's all I have to do to be satisfied I lived a good life. That's my definition of ethical. If you are, regardless of your intent, if you are causing more harm than you are saving people from harm, no matter what you think your motivations were, it doesn't matter. End result is your life was fail. You failed to function properly. So I'll defend my existence as functioning properly because I saved people from more harm than I caused. That's all I have to do. More people, in the sense of more sentient beings that shouldn't have been put in harm's way in the first place. Alright. Yeah. That's probably enough of a video. I will likely attempt another video this week. Try to make some more videos. But we'll see. I just got so much stuff going on lately in the brains. And got to organize my time better and make it more effective. I think. Yeah. Well, whatever. I'll just end up doing whatever I do, and we'll see what that is. There's nothing up there, Gary. Nothing to save you. No, the plan is not there. Okay, so I'll have to find it somewhere else. So anyway, this has been a Do Not God video production. And I'll see you the next time and such.